Good morning. Today's talk is it's a deeper cut on um, addiction, breaking bad habits, making new ones. Uh, so for those of you that are new to my talks, this is my general preface. Um, I stop and I take breath breaks, and I encourage you to do that. We all need micro releases. Just release, let go from everything that you're trying to do and accomplish and all the stresses in the world. And the best way to do that is to just take a deep breath and let it out. Just do it. It makes such a huge difference. Another thing about these talks is that these talks are they build to the juicier stuff in the end. They're you'll see in the time set, but they're like 20-30 minutes long because that's about how much my drive time is. And then the last thing in this intro section, which I always like to say, is that I encourage you to break the pattern of the high stimulus media. Scrolling, high visual, high reactive content. So this content is not very stimulating, can be kind of slow at times. And I encourage you to just sit with the slowness. We all need to slow down. Makes me think about the idea, can you see the forest for the trees? I just think so many of us just don't actually do that. We get so like our head down, just going to work, picking up the kids, going to the gym, making dinner, cleaning up, all the stuff you got to do, and we don't actually take moments to just make sure we're headed in the right direction. Okay, so back to the main topic at hand here, a sort of a deeper cut on breaking bad habits and addiction and meditation. I do think it's critical. Like if you're listening to people and you're trying to learn stuff from them, like if they're not talking about the challenges that they currently face, well, they're full of shit. Because everybody's got shit that they're dealing with. And if they're not, then they're either like an overconfident sort of narcissist who's buried all of their problems beneath some sort of layer of bullshit, or some other sort of disassociated type of human being. So the challenge that I'm facing right now is a lot of stress in my life. So if you can relate, let me know in the comments. You got a lot of stress in your life? What are your stresses? So my stresses are financial and health. Those are the two stresses, financial and health. Main ones. Relationships really good. Everything else is really good. But those are like two of the main things. So how is this all going to help you? Well, so yesterday in the talk, I talked about, how to begin to break these patterns, these sort of addictive, bad, habitual patterns, and how we're all kind of addicts. That they're I don't really believe, and I think it's a false narrative that somehow there are addicts and non-addicts. Everybody's on a spectrum of addiction, and there's cultural addictions, and you can define addiction as any choice that you make that you feel like you kind of lose yourself, or you lack control, or it's a bad choice. You just know it's a bad choice, or bad things start to happen in your life. So in any case, I was talking yesterday about the I drank some beers I don't normally drink. Made a bunch of bad food choices, a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs, which is I've tested pre-diabetic. I've taken measures to get that back under control, but I still have that tendency to eat too many carbs and sugar, which most of us do in this carb-soaked culture that we live in. So what I want to share with you today is I think I really want to share with you what I call somatic meditation. So it's basically Vipassana meditation, but nobody calls it somatic meditation, and they really should call it somatic meditation. Because in the Vipassana meditation, at least taught by S.N. Goenka, that I studied, in his particular style, what you do is, he's super, their particular teaching, that they're very rigid about its implementation, which I think is great on one level. I'm not that kind of person. I can't hold it to that rigid level, but I do like to dip back into their culture and use it. So, for example, in a Vipassana meditation, you're going to go to they won't even teach you the technique until you go and do a 10-day meditation, and it's not a money grab. They're free, which is amazing in today's day and age. So you go and do a 10-day meditation. They feed you and house you, and they teach you the meditation. And it's basically, they teach you first for 4 days, you pay attention to your breath, and then for 6 days, you body scan with equanimity. You try to keep yourself from identifying with pleasant sensations or trying to avoid unpleasant sensations. That's basically the whole technique in a nutshell. So I've been practicing that since 1995, so the better part of 30 years. Very difficult to keep up daily practice, but I've got 30 days of doing my best. And so after I made my bad choices over the weekend, holiday weekend, and was feeling the stress and the taxing on my body, because my body really can't handle the carbs. Like many of you out there, I've abused, the carb abuse has been carbs and sugar abuse has been so long for me that my body's like, no more, buddy. So as I'm dealing with this addictive pattern of, carbs and sugars, a little bit of alcohol, but more of the carbs and sugars for me. That's the big addiction for me. So one of the things that so yesterday, a friend of ours made us dinner, big giant plate of pasta and rice. And I was tired, it was late, I was already kind of feeling stressed, I had a long day. So I ate it all, and I knew it was bad. And I tried to take, I don't know if you've heard in the health circles, if you take berberine and alpha lipoic acid, it'll really help minimize the sugar spikes. So I just kind of and then after I had the pasta and the rice, then I had a piece of sourdough bread with peanut butter and jelly. So I fully carved out. And then I tried to take the supplements that would help, take the edge off, and it didn't work. And I slept like crap last night. And what happens when you overcarb and your body is sort of moving into pre-diabetic range, or is already in pre-diabetic range, you'll start to heat up, and you'll have cortisol spikes. So your body will cortisol spike, and then you'll wake up and you can't go back to sleep, and sometimes you're hot. Anyways, so all that happened to me last night. So this morning I got up, and I just knew, I've been thinking about this a lot. And one of the hardest things that we do when we're in sort of an uncomfortable state is sit with ourselves. So the first thing we want to do, you get in this cycle. Let's say you're in a cycle of something like that. It couldn't be alcohol and caffeine or whatever. But for me, you get up, you're tired, and the first thing you do is you reach for the caffeine, because the caffeine is going to pull you out of that experience, that physical state that you don't want to experience. So instead of going straight for the caffeine or something else, I started my morning practice. Normally I'll do a 10-minute yoga, 10-minute meditation, 10-minute breath work, and a 10-minute strengthening, stretching yoga type practice with prayers and intentions at the end. I don't hit it every day, but I do it as much as I can. So, but today instead, I decided that I needed to just sit in my body because I needed to start to break the pattern. And so I got in my meditation, I sat down. And one of my yoga teachers, Brian Kest, amazing teacher, lifelong Vipassana meditator, a lifelong yoga practitioner, a lifelong yoga teacher. He said the last time I interviewed him that you can check the interview on this on the channel. It's one of the podcast interviews I've done. He said the greatest thing. He said, most people don't want to sit down and meditate because it's confronting, and we don't appreciate that. Like a lot of people, when you say I can't meditate, it's just because you don't want to deal. You don't want to face yourself. And so this morning when I sat, I was like, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to sit inside my body. So here's the difference with these somatic meditation that I'm talking about. In a somatic meditation, you're not trying to like empty the mind or, find oneness or go to, repeat your mantra. That's all distraction. In a somatic meditation, what you're doing is you're scanning the body and you're trying to get deeply connected to the body without judgment. So, and what's amazing about the Vipassana technique is that you're scanning from top to bottom, and you go slow and methodical, and you're not keeping your attention in any one place, because that can become sort of reactive. Let's say you have like pain in your ear or whatever, and you just kind of keep focusing on your ear. Like you just keep trying to move your attention. So then you start like spreading your attention through your whole body, and that starts to open up. As long as you're doing it without attachment, you're trying to break that attachment cycle, it starts to open up your sort of body wisdom and your ability to be in the body when it's uncomfortable. So again, people think of emotions as this thing where it's just like this feeling and this idea that I have. Emotions are a narrative mapped on top of a physical sensation. And that physical sensation, we call that an emotion. But it's the physical sensation that's the root of all of that. So in the Vipassana technique, you really tap into those physical sensations and you just sit with them. So in yesterday's talk, I was talking about sitting in your pain. And I was definitely doing that this morning. So when you sit in your pain, or when you basically sit in your body and the sensations that are uncomfortable for you, or are very pleasant at the same, or at another time very pleasant, without attachment, without like clinging or pushing it away, you create an inner resilience every time you do it. And again, doesn't matter how little you do. If you're something is always better than nothing. All right, how am I gonna really bring this all down? It's such a big can of worms. It's such an important concept. So when you sit in your body, so like this morning, I'm sitting in my body and I can feel, here's the thing, you're stressed out. Let's talk about stress. You're stressed out. When you're stressed out, what do you reach for something to change the stress. You want to somehow do some breath work, do some whatever, like take some ashwagandha, take some magnesium glycinate, whatever your thing is. Take some kava, reishi, some pharmaceuticals, some weed, some CBD, whatever it is. Instead of doing that, sit in it. So this morning I was sitting in my body and I could feel it was almost like a vibration in my body from the higher level stress. I knew that I was super stressed out 2 days ago as my lips started to twitch. Like, oh crap, I'm drinking too much caffeine. I got too much stuff on my mind. I got too much debt I'm trying to clear. So as I'm doing that, let me back up a second. So I'm sitting in, slowing down, taking a breath. So I'm sitting in meditation and I'm feeling this buzzing. It's not comfortable. That's the thing. It's not pleasant. I don't want to experience it. I want to get up and even having a cup of coffee and moving is way more pleasant than sitting in this. Anything was more pleasant than, not anything, but most things were more pleasant than sitting in it. So I sat in it And then I just scanned from my head to my toes, toes to my head, slowly, part by part. It took me like 40 minutes actually to go through one cycle from my head to toe, toe to head. It is not about the cycles, but in the process of doing that, I was able to sit with what was going on in my body and soothe my sympathetic nervous system was on high alert. And I was able to soothe that and calm that and bring it back into a more balanced state in a way that you really can't do with physical exercise. So that's the thing. Like, I'm a very physical oriented person. I believe in physical exercise. I do workouts, I bike, I surf, I do all that stuff. But the meditation is different. You can't, even in yoga, you can sort of get there, but not really. You have to sit in utter and total stillness in order to access the deeper peace and wisdom inside of the body. So here's the thing that I guess what I'm, one of the nuggets I'm working towards is that all addiction, all bad behaviors, all bad habits are rooted in this, some sort of addicted physical sensation, a lot of times underneath, almost always underneath a mental narrative. So let's see if I can give you an example of that. So last night, I had the narrative. I worked hard. I had a long day. I did a good job. I have this wonderfully prepared, delicious, very carb-heavy meal in front of me. I deserve it. And I'll take some berberine and some alpha-lipoic acid to curb the effect of the carbs. So I had a narrative that A, I deserve it. B, I can do some mitigating things to make it okay. So I had those two things going on. And then there was the feeling. So at the end of the day, yesterday, I wasn't really in my body. So that's I guess what I'm saying about this body somatic centered meditation. I wasn't really in my body, so I couldn't sit with what was going on. Like, if I was sitting in my body and I took a few moments to be in my body, I would have noticed that I was hungry, that I was like, I wasn't really in a good space to kind of make decisions. I was kind of all over the place. It's difficult at the end of the day, I think, for most of us to make good food decisions, good life decisions. People don't get up early to do a bunch of dumb stuff. It's like late at night when you're fried for the day. That's when you make a bunch of bad decisions. So I was fried, and I didn't, it was hard because my family friends sort of handed me this wonderfully prepared, very carb-rich meal, and I just didn't have. I don't want to say I didn't have, but it was part of the personal ecosystem thing. So when I've talked before about, so your personal ecosystem is kind of the most important factor that's going to help you achieve your goals. And your personal ecosystem is made up of your rituals, your roles, your relationships, and your environment. So in my relationship, my friends handed me, oh wow, that's really cool. So they're building like this structure out of like trees. They're just putting the trees in the ground. It's almost like a tree house that they're building. Very cool. In any case, so my relationships, they handed me this wonderful carb thing, and it was great. It was delicious. And next time, what I need to do is sort of redefine my role inside of the relationship. So one of the things I need to work on is training them, my friends and family, that I'm the low carb guy, because that's really who I need to be for the rest of my life if I'm going to have a healthy, happy life. My body has told me that time and time again. That's what I need. Is I need a low carb diet in order to feel healthy and happy. So and I'm not saying that's what everybody needs, but there's something that you need that your body is telling you over and over again. So what I need to do is train the people in my life, train the people, my close relationships, that I'm the low carb guy. I've already trained them that I'm the guy who drinks 1 or 2 beers every 3 to 6 months. So they know that about me. They're not going to expect me to, go out and go on a bender with them. And like I said in the last video, I'm even considering being the guy who doesn't drink at all anymore. I'm just like, nah, let it go, done. So, and that brings us back to shaping your identity. So sort of creating your identity. And people really underappreciate the role of information and beliefs in shaping an identity. I have some friends who have recently adopted very, very different identities that they had from the past. And what's so underappreciated is there was this stream of information that built up that identity. It was bit by bit. They built little beliefs on top of little beliefs on top of little beliefs on top of little beliefs until there's a new identity on the other side. So you can consciously do that. I mean, let's say you want to quit drinking. Let's say you want to have a better diet. Let's say you want to, be more successful. You want to be more of a hard worker. Or you want to go to the gym more. Or you want to write your book. You can build an identity around you being someone that does that, but you have to be very careful of the media and the information and the ideas that you ingest, including the people that you hang around with, and including the roles that you have inside of those relationships. So that's sort of the ecosystem stuff, like if you, and coming back to the meditation thing, you should hang out with people who do somatic meditation. You join an online group. There's a lot of ways to, no, I don't want to say there's a lot of ways. That's probably the most powerful thing you can do. All right, so I have arrived, finishing up. So when you're trying to break bad habits, there's 2 things that I brought up. The first main part of this talk is sit in your body. These are such big topics. The brain is not where your consciousness lives. It's just, that's a weird Western idea that somehow your consciousness is here. Your consciousness is the whole body. We get that from this Judeo-Christian Middle Eastern idea that somehow we're separate from the body and we need to disassociate from the body and identify with spirit, which is something different than the body, which is a very illogical and inaccurate description of what we are. We are an entity. I've told in other talks I've talked about how we are 100 trillion births fanning out from our parents to grandparents to great grandparents and on out. 100 trillion births and lifetimes of wisdom within your body. It doesn't live here, it lives in the whole thing. So your whole body is your entity, your whole identity. And then that also, all of your interaction, your connections and your relationships with all beings, all humans, everybody, and then all their relationship history. So you're this massive entity that's way beyond this little bloop sphere in here. That's just like this little teeny part of who you are. So you've got to tap into the body wisdom, and the way to break addiction, and the way to break, one of the keys to breaking addiction is to go into the body when you don't like the way it feels and to sit with it. That starts to break the pattern. Every time, the more I meditate, the less I act out in addictive ways. The less I meditate in this somatic, equanimous way. That's the key. It's not about like focusing your mind or finding God or, this experience of transcendence. That's all fucking horseshit. It's about getting in your body and being in your body without judgment and getting in the whole body. And something transforms when you get in the whole body. Like when you get in the whole body without judgment and you could sit there for a long time, I guarantee you'll go to another level. And it really works. Plus it's so damn good for you. On a physical level. When I was younger, I used to be more. I used to meditate more. I had more discipline and time around it. And there was times when I used to be able to sit down and meditate, and I would turn on my parasympathetic nervous system in such a way that my whole body would just like start heating up. Like you hear those stories about the Tibetan masters that will sit out in the snow with a wet blanket on in the freezing weather and heat it up. That actually happened to me just by being super chill inside my nervous system. It turned on this heat button inside of me. So there's so much deeper stuff going on inside of you that if you don't sit quietly with, you won't access, but we all have access to it. So huge plug for somatic meditation. It could be the S and Goenka style, it could be another style, but just make sure you're going in your body, you're sitting equanimous with it, and you're moving your attention through your body. And then the other part that I brought up is the ecosystem part. You want to really begin to change, encourage, teach the other people in your world how you have a different role. You're a different identity. This identity that you are is you're the low carb guy. So I'm going to start training everybody in my world that I'm the low carb guy. That's my new identity. Lots of new identities that you can adopt, and I'm going to keep. And then use the media. So I'm going to start using more media consciously and start getting into the low carb world and start really delving into all of the benefits of that, because I've seen with my Whoop tracker how much low carb days and eat-tray, early time restricted eating, intermittent fasting has completely changed my life and made it a better life. But I have to build the identity part of it. I have to build the new habits. And one of the best way to break the old habits is to sit in the body and see, just be with it. And especially when you've made bad decisions. There's a wonderful saying that when a crisis is a tragic thing to waste. So I had a little mini crisis where I, made a bunch of bad health and food decisions, and it thrashed my body, and my body feels horrible. And to waste that by like numbing myself out is a tragedy. But instead, to sit with the pain, I now have the opportunity to evolve to a new place. And that's another important point, which I really want to end with. And that is that people have this illusion that somehow you get there. Like, you never get there. What you do is you go up and you go down, and you go up and you go down, and you go up and you go down. But you just try to keep the trajectory going up. As you're going like this, and like, I made a good decision, I made a bad decision, I succeeded, I failed, I screwed up, all of that. You just got to be going that way. And so there's just so many people give up because they don't realize that they don't give themselves permission to fail regularly. You got to fail all the time and just keep heading. Just keep your eyes on the prize and just keep failing, and keep just building your capacity to see when you failed, and celebrate failure. It's like, oh crap, that was so great. I made such a great transgression in my life. All the pizza, beer, and ice cream, and how crappy I felt afterwards. And I get to be conscious of that. And that's the wake up call. Every time you have a wake up call, it's a good thing instead of seeing it as a bad thing. I'm still learning this one. It's so hard to learn. When you screw up, it's a good thing. When you wake up, you screw up and you wake up, and you're not like just giving it lip service. You screw up, you wake up, and you feel the pain. So you have to go through that feel the pain phase, or you're just going to recycle it in. If you screw up and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I screwed up, and then you don't feel the pain, that's when the cycle continues and it gets worse. But if you sit in the pain, knowing that this is part of the cycle, yeah. All right, I wish you best of luck. Leave comments, subscribe, tell a friend. Still looking for somebody who wants to do a live coaching session. The links to newsletter offerings, recommended products, etc. That's all in the About page on the YouTube channel page. Until further notice, until I do anything, make any other stuff. Sometimes I try to put it in the video too. All right, peace.